5,000 years old, a nation where traditions coexist with modern society. As early as in 5th century AD, Aryabhatta, the mathematical genius, invented zero that revolutionized mathematics. In Indian mythology, this symbolizes universal unity. This represents power. This depicts integrity inherent in humankind. While the country moves ahead towards prosperity and progression, it embraces its past to forge its future. As the symbols of unity, power, integrity and progression come together, it creates the Saraswati Yantra, the divine source of knowledge and wisdom. A perfect visual identity for the 21st World Congress of Accountants, inspiring the gatekeepers of world economy to attain excellence, independence and integrity. India proudly welcomes global accounting experts to 21st World Congress of Accountants at India's financial capital, Mumbai, November 18 to 21, 2022.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great joy to be back here today with all of you and to welcome all of you on behalf of SIRC of ICAI on day 3 of the 52nd Regional Conference of SIRC 2020, named and themed as SIGARAM, Breakthrough to Excellence.
So let's all rise for the ICAI motto song.
य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्मिमाणः निर्मिमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शितः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्द्वैता 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 एतद्द्वैता.
Thank you. May I now request CA Dungar Chand U. Jain, our Chairman SIRC, to give his welcome address.
Thank you, MCs. I welcome you all to the day 3 of this SIGARAM, the 52nd Regional Conference of SIRC of ICAI. The only 2 quick messages I thought I'll start the day with. First is following ICAI. And when I say following ICAI, the one that comes is Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. But I would like to recoin it where I stands for independence, C stands for code of ethics, A stands for auditing pronouncements, and the next I stands for integrity. So it is, the culmination of this is what the name of our institute is, Flying High. And I'm only reminded of what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar told when the constitution was framed. He said that however good a constitution may be, if those who are implementing it are not good, it will prove to be bad. However bad a constitution may be, if those who are implementing it are good, it will prove to be good. So it is all depends on the people who implement it, and I'm very sure our professionals will play a constructive role in the achieving the objectives of the government, as well as to see that the assessees are given the proper advice what is required. And second, I would like to touch upon technology. A lot has been talking about it, but only thing I would like to say that if you are not going to embrace it, you are going to be embarrassed about it. And the one quote which suits technology very well is Charles Darwin's quotes, which goes that it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but it is the one most adaptable to change. Whether you like it or not, we'll kind of have to live with technological advancements, whatever technology is taking us through. So I wish you all a very happy learning for the day 3 and the day tomorrow as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. For the first session, for the first technical session, we have CA Abhishek Murli, Secretary SIRC, CA G Shekhar, Central Council Member, and the Speaker CA Harish Salve. May I now request CA Abhishek Murli, Secretary SIRC, to give the speaker introduction.
The Dynamic Chairman of SIRC, CA Dunga Chand Jain, Central Council Member, CA G Shekhar, all the persons who have joined in today, and of course, our beloved speaker, Mr. Harish Salve. It gives me immense pleasure and pride to have the opportunity to introduce someone who is my inspiration and my role model. Harish Salve, sir, it's really a pleasure for me to have you with us here today. And now I will be formally introducing you to the audience, even though I'm sure all our members need no introduction to you. The Advocate Harish Salve obtained his Bachelor of Commerce from Nagpur University and Bachelor of Law from Nagpur University as well. He is now a member of the International Bar Association and International Law Association. He is also an associate member of the London Maritime International Arbiters Association, or the LMIA. He started off as a chartered accountant, focusing exclusively in taxation, and then he took a decision to shift to his counsel practice and joined the chamber of the very well-respected Mr. Sodhi Sarabji. He then went on to set up his own independent practice in 1986 and was designated a senior advocate in 1992. He practiced mostly in the Supreme Court of India and the Delhi High Court, and of course, the International Court of Justice. He appeared in almost all the High Courts of India, and he became the Solicitor General of India in 1999, a unique privilege of having been the youngest ever Solicitor General at the age of 43 years. He is now appointed as a member of the Queen's Counsel and is in private practice as a senior counsel as well as an arbitrator. In fact, he is appointed as the arbitrator by the International Chambers of Commerce, the London Court of International Arbitration, and the Singapore International Arbitration Council. In fact, in July 2013, he was admitted to the Bar of United Kingdom and Wales on the basis of his Indian qualifications, his experience and accomplishments at the bar, waiving the requirement to do pupillage or possessing the English qualifications, and is now a full tenant of the very, very prestigious Blackstone Chambers. His list of cases are something we're all familiar with. He's handled the most high-profile cases in India and has even represented India in the International Court of Justice. I think most popularly, everyone here knows the sort of yeoman service he has done for our country, especially in the Kulbhushan Yadav case, where he obtained an order restraining Pakistan from executing him. And this was followed upon on a live basis by all of us. We were watching and hoping, and he was the one fighting in the front line for us. He is also, of course, an expert in constitutional law, argued on freedom of speech, even in Tamil Nadu, the 9th schedule of the Constitution, right to privacy, water disputes across various states, reservation in public employment, and even as an amicus curiae in the environment matters, clean air matters, police reforms, mental health, and even in the criminal matter, in the Upar matter, he appeared as a pro bono, as a special public prosecutor, and this was the first ever case of a conviction in a white-collared crime in the country, where 2 business tycoons were convicted for gross negligence in the management of a cinema hall. Taxation is something as chartered accountants are all close to, and he, of course, represented in probably India's most famous case. I must say, even when I went abroad and I did my international taxation course in Netherlands, this was so talked about, the Vodafone holding case, Vodafone International Holdings, where he argued, and in fact, he's got landmark decisions across the board. He's a person of really, really high stature. I'm sure he's extremely busy. It's a matter of pride to have you with us here today, sir. And I must say, as a young chartered accountant who practices in appeals and litigation. You are my inspiration. You are my role model. And I've always wondered how you shifted from CA to law so effortlessly and became an expert in constitutional matters as well. So we're really looking forward to hearing from you today. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be here today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We now have the e-felicitation of the speaker. We now request our Central Council member, C.A.G. Sekhar sir, to give his special address.
Speaker of this session and special chief guest, Harish Salviji, Dungarchand Jain, Regional Council Chairman, Abhishek Murali. Today, I don't find any words. I have to be one of the speaker along with Harish Salviji. Sir, I've gone through so many of your arguments, and today you have taken a right topic at a right point of time for the chartered accountants to know what is the role in litigation. Because you are also a chartered accountant, very senior, experienced counsel internationally, and brought lot of laurels to this country through your knowledge, efficiency. The role of chartered accountants in the field of already they have been enough trained, both theoretically and practically from the day one they started the learning of chartered accountancy as an article clerk in the field of direct taxes, indirect taxes, corporate law, presently even international standards of IFRS, Ind AS, standards on auditing, insolvency code, every area of commercial and labor and business laws, chartered accountants are sufficiently trained in comparison with the legal professionals. But this profession is facing in the recent times a toughest challenge from the legal profession. Both you are in the field of legal profession and as a chartered accountant. Sir, you know very well, in 2006, Government of India brought National Tax Tribunal. The chartered accountant thought that there is a big opening for the chartered accountancy profession. For their clients, they can go up to National Tax Tribunal and represent what they are doing today in the National Company Law Tribunal, Appellate Tribunal also. But unfortunately, in my opinion, unfortunately, because I'm also a direct tax practitioner for last 34 years, we missed the bus in the Supreme Court. The Honorable Supreme Court held that it is unconstitutional, and the chartered other than legal professional, nobody should be permitted to practice in National Tax Tribunal. And the whole tribunal is held unconstitutional. So the whole idea has been dropped. But what I feel, being the chartered accountant, and you know we are the person very well trained in accounts, preparation of accounts, presentation of accounts, various accounting and auditing standards which is essential for commercial requirements. We are the best person in case of financial dispute to represent various forums on arbitration matters. We can play an effective role. So I request, please highlight the today's professional, how they can equip, how they can make themselves to meet the challenges of the requirements. More than you, no other person can share your thoughts and experience. On behalf of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and on behalf of the Council, I am thanking you in your busy schedule, sitting from London, in the interest of the profession. You are sparing your valuable time, because to get your appointment for even for a clientele case, how long we have to wait as a council member of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. I know very well. You are voluntarily sparing for the SIRC members of 54,000 members and who are listening to the program. I feel it is the biggest important day in their life. So I don't want to stand between you and our learned chartered accountants. Please, we are waiting to listen to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Harishji, I would only like to tell you that there are 3,400 participants live, and later there are more people who are going to see this and get benefited. And you can also touch upon any other subjects of your choice. It will be a value addition to our professionals. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. One of the problems I have in webinars is you don't know who all are on the dais. So I start always by saying all the friends on the dais and all those who have logged in this Saturday afternoon, thank you so much for this opportunity of sharing some thoughts on the role of a chartered accountant, the work of a chartered accountant, the profession of a chartered accountant. Post 2020. The world has gone through a complete change with this almost year-long shutdown. And very little of what we see around us has not been profoundly affected by the social fallout, the emotional fallout, and the economic fallout of the pandemic. So when we contemplate the way forward, what we need to do is to take a step back, and that is in one sense, the biggest opportunity this slowdown has provided us. When the treadmill stops, you get off and take stock of where you are. Otherwise, we are all busy professionals on life's treadmill. Life halted or paused our treadmill so that we could get off and take stock of what has gone wrong and find how we are going to come out of this where we find ourselves today. And I don't minimize the task that we have ahead of us. In fact, it's almost daunting. When we speak of the role of professionals generally, especially those who are closely affiliated, those who are an adjunct of business, be it accountants, be it lawyers practicing on the commercial side. In India, be it lawyers also practicing on the constitutional side, doing judicial review work, writ petition work. All of us are part of the larger ecosystem in which India does business. We are the part of a larger ecosystem in which Southeast Asia does business. India now is in the world's top 10 economies, while our per capita may be below Bangladesh. Our gross domestic product is larger than Britain and a lot of other developed countries. So all of us professionals are a part of an ecosystem in which the world does business. And the world is now going to be a different place. So what role do we find for ourselves as professionals in this new world? And that's the larger issue we have to address ourselves to. Chartered accountants have conventionally been associated with the administration of tax laws. When I was a young article clerk and then a young chartered accountant, I'm talking now of 1977, 78, there was hardly any indirect tax work which chartered accountants would do. Excise and customs was something which was the province of lawyers. Income tax had three competitors: the tax advocates, as they were called, lawyers practicing on the taxation side, the chartered accountants, and the ones both of us jointly looked down upon, the ITPs, the income tax practitioners. Over a period of time, all over the world, tax practice evolved as taxation laws became more and more specialized. The chartered accountants and lawyers have traditionally in one sense been competitors in the space for tax litigation. And while one tribunal may have failed at the altar of the Supreme Court, and I must say for very good reason, today chartered accountants are practicing in areas which were never contemplated. International certifications such as transfer pricing, international dispute resolutions on tax. Nobody ever thought of this turn. Nobody ever thought India would reach a position where we would have this kind of international exposure and international interaction. I have seen the kind of practice which chartered accountants have developed, even in the GST area, is remarkable. And very soon these boundary lines are being blurred. So as the world reshapes itself as a powerful profession, and we are a powerful profession, and I'm proud of saying that. I don't mean it pejoratively, I mean it in a sense of great pride I take in being a chartered accountant. The kind of education we go through, the kind of training we go through, the kind of skills we acquire, we are a powerful profession. We will always have a very important social role to play. We will always have a very important role to play in creation of an ecosystem which benefits the business community, because we are joined at the hip. If they do well, we do well. And so we must think of where this divide is and how do we make the best of our new defined role, and where do we find ourselves today and how can we move forward. If I may just digress and mention, I am very happy personally that the tribunalization of justice was stopped by the Supreme Court. But does it mean a professional setback opportunity-wise to chartered accountants? And my answer is a resounding no, and for this reason. And that's the part of the larger theme of the ideas I propose to share with you today. Practicing before the tax tribunal, as it exists, always has been and will be the primary focus of accountants who are practicing on the taxation side. You are the natural choice, because unless there is a complex question of law in which your client may want you to engage a lawyer, you do the case, we appear before the tax officers, we appear before the first appellate officers, whoever, whatever they may be called. And therefore, we are the natural choice of the client for the tax tribunal. Do we need another tribunal? We don't. Look at how other tax laws are administered. Why did we need another tribunal? Because we said we were overloading the High Court. And why were we overloading the High Court? Because our mindset is everything which is adverse must be appealed, whether by us or by the tax department. And worse is the tax department, because they would appeal everything. Why? Because nobody would take the responsibility of saying, don't appeal. Instead of addressing the core problem of why we were manufacturing hopeless litigation, the government then did what they do best, create yet another forum. And what do tribunals tend to become? Let's just step back in India and have a look. What do tribunals tend to become? The idea of tribunals, the late Chief Justice Kapadia used to always say, you must bring to bear domain expertise in a tribunal. In a competition commission, you must bring to bear expertise in competition law. In an insolvency tribunal, you must bring to bear expertise in administration of insolvencies. In a tax tribunal, you must bring to bear expertise in taxation. In a GST tribunal, you must bring to bear expertise in the GST law. In the air tribunal, you must bring to bear expertise in how airlines and airports are administered. But what do we have? We have, fortunately, in the tax area at least, we always manage to get tribunals of those who have either worked in the tax system on the government side or those who have worked in the tax system on the assessee side. And so we had a tribunal with expertise, and that is why there was a time when the income tax tribunal had the pride of place amongst quasi-courts which administered justice. And when I say quasi-courts, I mean it as a compliment, not as a criticism. You were respected, tribunal orders were respected as though they were orders of court. We have then gone into the mode of creating tribunals and see where we are. Wherever we create tribunals, they become parking slots for retired civil servants. I'm sorry, I do not mean to criticize civil servants. They are very highly trained, they're very highly qualified, they've spent their life in civil service. But what domain expertise do you bring to a competition commission? Or what domain expertise do you bring to an air tribunal, to an insurance tribunal, to a telecom tribunal, and so on? What happens because of excessive tribunalization is you are removing, what have we done today? If the tax tribunal had come tax cases, there must be important tax cases which go to the High Court, which construction is resolved by a court. Because interpretation of law, and there is a larger issue at stake here, interpretation of law must be by the judiciary. And diluting that dilutes the rule of law. We had for a phase, fortunately it's slowed down, for a phase we had interpretation of law being dictated by the tax department. Every time the tribunal ruled, forget the High Court, every time the tribunal ruled, you saw a retrospective amendment. What does that become? That becomes interpretation of the law by the tax department, because let's face it, how do of course, it's the wisdom of Parliament, but how many MPs even read the amendments which are being made to the Tax Act? When the Vodafone retrospective amendment came, it was not in the finance minister's speech. He didn't think it important enough to mention something which has shaken global confidence in India's fairness. Was not mentioned in the speech. So, of course, we all live with the legal fiction of the wisdom of Parliament where it comes to these kind of amendments. But the truth be told, they have no political bite and therefore they have no interest. So the moment we start compromising these values, we start eroding the rule of law. That is one objection I have to the tribunalization of justice. But why should there be so many cases which require interpretation of law at this level? And that's the question which we need to address. That's the question which impinges on the ease of doing business in India. And if business grows, let's look at vertical growth, not horizontal growth. If business grows, if there are more businesses, if there is more money, we will have more work. You will have more assessments to attend to. Why should we worry about taking one client into 6 fora? Why not have 6 clients before the tax officer? They gain and we gain. Everybody gains. So that is where we need to start looking. So I'm happy that this tribunalization, because we already have a tax tribunal. Why do we need a second tax tribunal? Which means that questions of law would go to the tribunal. And then look at what happens to our High Court. I'm sorry I'm digressing, but let me tell you the larger picture which I see as a member of the bar. So today you have High Court judges who will have no experience of doing any income tax cases, because if you had had a national tax tribunal, they would all go there. Who will never hear a company law case because you have the companies tribunal and the National Company Laws Appellate Tribunal. Who will never hear an insolvency case because you have the National Company Law Tribunal and the Appellate Tribunal who deal with insolvency. Who will never hear an insurance case because you have an insurance tribunal. Who will never hear a case relating to telecom because you have the telecom tribunal. Who will never hear a case relating to airports because you have the air tribunal. And then these judges will go to Supreme Court. If they had never heard a tax case in their life, and then in Supreme Court they would sit and decide tax cases, I see the struggle we have with judges who have never had this width of experience. And this problem is going to manifest itself in a decade. Today, we have judges who practiced 20 years ago where all these jurisdictions were available. 20 years from now, we will have, fortunately, I would have hung up my boots, but you would have judges who have never heard a company law case, who never heard any of these commercial causes, suddenly deciding the fate of all this in the Supreme Court. And what will they do? Let me tell you honestly, the many times when you're uncertain about a subject, you play safe and decide in favor of the government because you wonder if you decide against the government where this is going to end up. Not because you're a judge who's bullied, not because you're a judge who's timorous, but because you are uncertain with the subject matter. So that is why this wrong drift in our system had to be arrested. And I'm happy the Supreme Court did that. And mind you, the same Supreme Court upheld the NCLAT because primarily it consists of judicial people. Whether it's a good experiment or whether it should go back. Speaking for myself, I think after the NCLT, you must have an appeal to the High Court, but that's a separate matter. The role of chartered accountants, and that is something I wanted to share a few ideas with you today. It was, I think, 9 months ago that on a seminar organized by the Institute, I mentioned about Reset India. And I said the COVID related discipline, which had come into play, showed a new sense of partnership, a new sense of trust, where it came to protecting our own lives. It showed a new sense of discipline, which we Indians displayed. We can never stand in a queue. As we say, Indians can never stand in a queue. If you have 2 Indians, it's a queue. If you have 3 Indians, you have 2 queues. And that's our characteristic. We fell into line and did what the government asked us to do, even at great personal discomfort, which shows that where push gets to shove, we have it within us to change our mindsets and to do what we must do. When we talk of Reset India, what do we set out to achieve? My idea of Reset India was to invite the government to have greater faith in Indian people. The agencies who administer the law should deal with the people of India with a soft touch. Today we have a sense of trepidation. The normal Indian has a sense of fear every time he gets a notice or an email from any of the agencies, because he knows once it begins, it never ends, and it never ends well. This sense must go, and it can only go where the government changes its mindset, and that is what I spoke of in Reset India. We have to get rid of what we call excessive governance. You may have read recently about some degree of cautious optimism that India had eased up on the ease of doing business list created by the World Bank. And we had hit number 63, I think. But it's a sobering thought to think that Kosovo, Morocco, Armenia, Bahrain, and countries like that are above us, not below us, in the ease of doing business. And what always bothers me is the fact that a country like China, without democracy, is way higher than India with its democracy. We always pride ourselves as the largest English-speaking democracy of the world, and we are. And we have established over and over again that we have democracy in our marrow. Indians will never live without democracy. But with all that, why are we so low in the ease of doing business list? If you see the things we tick off, the factors which the World Bank takes into account, the infrastructure is definitely improved, power generation is improved, roads have improved, bridges have improved, floating companies has become marginally easier, etc., etc. But when it comes to administration of fiscal laws, that's we still have a black hole in India. I have no experience whatsoever of this faceless assessments. I'm sure all of you would have hands-on experience. But it's a good measure. At least it shows the intent in the right direction. What do we need to refashion ourselves to? Let us also recognize that what the world faces and what we face in India is a very daunting task in the years to come. The Prime Minister announced a COVID relief package of 20 trillion rupees, $260 billion. Of course, there was some ill-informed criticism saying, oh, but he has not announced the detail. It's not a question of detail, and it's not a handout. It is a overall limit which the government has set for the measures which they will from time to time put in place for easing the problems created by COVID. One small example, which was never spoken of, which has come in now, is the relief on interest to the common man from banks, which was announced recently, and the government informed the Supreme Court. And these will go on and on and on. Where is this money going to come from? Of course, today, I said this in my March speech, and I repeat, today is perhaps the best time for the government of India to resort to deficit financing to reignite the economy. It's almost scary to think of the revised norms which we are applying to gauge how well our economy is doing. We used to talk about India's growth rate. Today, the Moody's said that they forecast a gradual improvement in the economic activity over the coming quarters. How? Because your negative growth rate will fall from 9% to 8% to 8.5% to 7%. It is almost scary that this is what we are talking about. We are set to shrink at the same pace at which we were proud to grow. This will put pressure on the system. Ultimately, deficit financing has to come from tax revenues over a period of time. We have to pay for it. If the government of India borrows money, the people of India are borrowing money. If the people of India are borrowing money, the people of India have to repay that debt. The only way it can be repaid is by expanding the tax base. There was some suggestion of increasing the tax rate, which I thought was the most monstrous suggestion, because at a time when you're reeling from an economic onslaught of a pandemic, the best way you can destroy whatever hope remains is by tinkering with the fiscal basics. What we need to think of, and I'm very happy the government went that way, rather than increasing the rate, they thought they would put this money in, which would spark commercial activity, which would increase commercial activity, which would increase turnovers, which would increase, therefore, profits, and therefore would increase tax collections, which ultimately will pay back this borrowing. What role do we have to play in that? And that is very important to understand. The International Ethics Standard Board for Accountants, which I'm sure all of you have heard of, has come up with a new revision of its ethical standards. And our 2019, the 12th edition of the 11th and 12th edition of our Institute's Standards of Ethics is based on the international standards. What is important is that in October 2020, the final pronouncement they released spoke of revisions of the code to promote the role and, mark these words, and mindset expected of professional accountants. They said, in recognizing the breadth and significance of the accountancy profession's impact in businesses, governments, and societies at large, the profession and its members accept a responsibility to act in the public interest. However, doing so can be challenging, especially in times of economic, societal, and technological change. And the role and mindset revisions, therefore, are designed to reinforce the importance of our public interest responsibilities. What are the three big objectives? They identified the three big objectives as recognizing the central role compliance, which professional accountants will be able to meet their duty of acting in public interest. For the first time, a book on ethics should not only be a decoration on our bookshelves. It is something which we need to pick up and read and revise in this moment of introspection when we are still off the treadmill. The renewed mindset which they speak of, they expect would teach us about the behavioral characteristics that apply to all professional activities. And this applies to lawyers as much as it applies to chartered accountants. Our public interest role, which the new ethics speaks of, is extremely, extremely important. And the two things it ticks are integrity and objectivity, which is the same as the first two in the ethics which we have already revised. In our fundamental principles, we have marked integrity and objectivity and professional behavior as our key objectives. Why am I bringing this up? Because today, what we have to do is we have to help prepare India for India post 2020. And we have to help prepare India for the world post 2020. How do we prepare India for India? We have to stop thinking of how to beat the system. My generation, to quite an extent, the generation before me, to a much larger extent, grew up at a time of completely unreasonable and almost arbitrary tax legislation. An anthology of Mr. Palkhiwala's speeches has been published. You just have to read his budget speeches year on year to know the nonsense which went on. The late Mr. Y.B. Chavan was once made finance minister, and my late father used to always speak with horror about a story where he was on one of the parliamentary committees, finance committees, and he told Mr. Chavan that, we must think in terms of reducing rates of tax because it ensures better compliance and you will collect more money. He said, don't be stupid. I was thinking of increasing it. But he said, sir, how will people pay more tax? He said, who's saying people should pay more tax? All I'm saying is we should increase the rate. People pay what they want to pay. At least politically, we must look that we can go and tell the poor people that we've added another 5% tax on the rich people. Of course, we know they will pay what they want to pay. They are also our friends. That mindset prevailed in India, the socialist mindset. It is very grudgingly we accepted that a reduction in tax rate results in improved compliance. And I'm not too sure the tax department was happy with that development because it reduces their work and their sphere of influence. We therefore grew up in an ecosystem where beating the system, finding cracks, finding bends, and exploiting them was your primary target. I think the Income Tax Act is due for a thorough revision. I would think of at least 20, 25 provisions which I would take a red pencil across. This is not the occasion to speak about them. One of them is, for example, the law on taxing gifts. I asked Mr. Jaitley once, I said, why do you have this law? He said, well, people make gifts and evade tax. I said, but you don't have a gift tax, so why should you have this law? And I told him, I said, I run a scholarship in my mother's name where I help Indian students go and study in Oxford. I said, 2 of them I have paid for, and believe me, they are way above your threshold of gifts. Are they related to me? Obviously not. On the contrary, they have to be selected by Oxford University, by Exeter College. I don't even know who they are. Look at your section. The amount I have paid for that child's education, she comes from a middle-class family who live in a 3-room flat in Vasant Kunj. Her father will have to sell his flat to pay the tax on what this young child's fees is. And she is such a bright girl. She has got A+, she has done India proud, she's got a scholarship for her master's. You want to send her father a tax notice? I said, these people will come and burn your tax office if you do this. He said, how can that be? The chairman of the board was there. That lady, he asked her and she said, yes. He said, go and meet Mr. Salve. She said, we'll issue a circular. I said, why circular? Delete the provision. I don't think any circular has been issued dealing with bona fide gifts. I said, you're bringing in the GAR. Aren't you satisfied that all tax avoidance tactics which are not kosher will be picked up by the GAR? And if that is not going to happen, then your GAR needs to be repaired. But for God's sake, don't make statutory presumptions, irrebuttable presumptions, which make your law unfair. So that's the system we have grown up to, and we must invite the government to scratch out a large number of tax provisions. But at the same time, it can only happen when we help create an ecosystem in which the government can equally be sure that we don't work all the time towards beating the system. Don't encourage a mindset in which you swim out of the stream. Encourage a mindset in which you swim with the stream. No, I'm not advocating that you pay more tax than what the law obliges you, but pay a fair share of tax. We have to bear a fair share of the borrowings which all of us are making by deficit financing. This deficit financing will help each one of us get past the COVID crisis. We will owe duty to society to pay it back. Otherwise, we will destroy ourselves. Let us not sow the branch on which we are today delicately perched. We need to be the change. We ask the government to change, but we need to be the change. We all are concerned with corruption in administration. We just need to remind ourselves, corruption always involves 2 parties. An official cannot be corrupt by himself. Somebody is corrupting him or helping him being corrupt. This is one area when we can be the change. If accountants resolve firmly that we will not help a client who is resorting to these kind of techniques, we would have been the change. We owe it to the next generation, the digital generation, that we clean up this mess. I always say my generation has failed, but I have so much confidence that the next generation is much stronger and far more articulate. The power of social media, the information explosion has equipped the generation after mine. Those of you who are in your 30s and 40s are of a much stronger mindset. And therefore, I say this, I appeal to you. We have failed to be the change. You be the change. Make us proud, and I'm sure you will. You have to prepare India for the world. We have to encourage our clients to accept and embrace global standards. We have done it in our profession. Whether you talk of accounting standards or whether you talk of ethical standards, we have been in the forefront of embracing global standards. I am proud that our profession has not shied away from opening its doors to international firms. And I always tell lawyers that I'm all for opening legal practice to international firms. See how much we have gained in the accountancy profession. Our youngsters get the benefit of working with accountants from all over the world. That is how today India's accountancy profession stands proud, stands tall, stands shoulder to shoulder with its international counterparts. We have already been the change in the way we work. We now need to do the next step. We need to encourage our clients to accept global standards. We need to encourage our clients to see businesses, international businesses, as partnerships and not endeavors in pugilism. Everything is not about a boxing match. What about holding hands and moving ahead together? And believe me, the world will need that. You are having a realignment at various levels of the kind you have never seen. The world is today coming around to the view that China's expansionism has to be contained. And who can lead the battle? India will lead that battle globally. But how will India lead that battle? If we want to hold hands with the Japanese, the Australians, the Canadians, even the Americans, we will need to create a common ecosystem. So we will, and believe me, I say so because I'm an Indian, we will have to rise to their standards. Whatever our ancient scriptures have taught us, we have forgotten a lot of them in the last 4 or 5 decades. India was known for its strong spiritual and moral character. That's disappeared somewhere. But it happens when you're a fledgling democracy. We are a very young democracy. We were born in 1950, really, for all practical purposes. They're only 70 years old. Other countries are 200 years old. So we need to make this change. We need to explain to our clients that Atmanirbhar Bharat, an independent India, is not an isolationist India. It's an expansionist India. We are going to produce, consume, and then have enough to trade globally. We will not be subject to global winds. We will be the anchor of the global economy. Let's rise to this occasion. India post-COVID can reposition itself. But to reposition itself, India's business will have to reposition itself. And India's business cannot reposition itself unless our profession becomes the change. And we have a very important role to play, because I know the role of a businessman with his accountant is the relationship of an Indian businessman. Having worked in that ecosystem, I know the relationship of an Indian businessman with his accountant is the relationship of a patient with a doctor, your family physician. He will not do anything without asking his accountant. And somewhere the Indian businessman also looks for a validation from his accountant of what he's doing. We can be the change, we can bring the change. And that is how we will make India strong. And the last thing which I want to share with you is, today the Indian's word is distrusted. And that is why one of the things which troubles Indians in doing business overseas is that nobody takes us seriously. Let's come back to the stage where the word of an Indian is cast in stone. I'm sure we will make it. I've taken more time than I should have. I will just close with, I was reading one of my old books on poetry, and I read something by Wordsworth. And I thought I'd share a few lines with you about who is, in Wordsworth's word, the warrior, whose high endeavors are an inward light that makes the path before him always bright, who with a natural instinct to discern what knowledgeable can perform and is diligent to learn, abides by this resolve and stops not there, but makes his moral being his prime care. Thank you.
Sir, what a profound words that you said while you closed it. And we thoroughly enjoyed your sheer presence. Along with it, we also happen to hear and, for you to share about the litigation and many more. What a visionary you are, sir. Salute to you. We are so, so delighted to have you, being in England and to join with us here today. We are truly, truly lucky. Also, your vision towards global standards and to a change, from elders when it comes for the youngsters, we are for it, sir. And we are very, very sure that we will win it over. We will put our best to make this change a great, good change. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Harish ji.